Welcome your host, Caddy Frink, as she leads discussions about substance use disorder and the journey to recovery. You're listening to Redefining Recovery, a recovery revolution.
Well, hello out there in radio land. Welcome to Redefining Recovery, a recovery revolution here on AM 950, the marvelous progressive radio station. My name is Caddy Frink. I am your host. I am, for the second time in my marvelous journey as being a radio host, doing a show by myself. So there won't be any other voices. So hopefully you will still hang on, because I got some really interesting stuff to talk about. So one of the things that we always talk about is, or say initially, is what's right with the humans that I'm with. So I will describe what's right with me today. So what's right with me today is I had a relative in town. Her first name is Kathy, and she's in doing some things around some property that she owns. And it was a wonderful conversation. She got dinner for myself and my guy, Eric, and we had a lovely chat, all three of us. And then the guy decided to go take a snooze to go to bed. And then Kathy and I just talked for like a good hour and a half. And I don't know how many out there will sometimes be able to have a conversation that you are like, wow, that was great. And that was the case. It was really nice to just have she and I hanging out with a cool breeze coming in, because it kind of got cool last night. And so I just really enjoyed that. And for one of the discussions was these things called cell phones can interrupt so much of our communication, and actually having a conversation was super cool and just being relaxed about it. She also talked about something. I'm just going to mention this. I thought it was really interesting. Many of us have, and myself included, so it's not just on Kathy, many of us kind of have phone phobias now and then. And I think what I want to point out about that is that we've gotten so used to texting. We do it in places and spaces where we probably shouldn't. But, let's everybody pick up the phone and have a conversation or get in front of somebody. I think that's probably one of the reasons why at Minnesota Recovery Connection, when we talk about peer-to-peer services, that's the value of what the work that we do, and many other recovery community organizations in the state and around the country for that matter. And that is having that one-to-one conversation has such value. And that's what I got last night with my cousin. And we were just yammering. And so I highly encourage anybody who's listening to this, either on a podcast or maybe that Saturday morning time from 10 to 11, listen, and then maybe just take a break and give a person a call and listen to their voice, listen to those nuances somebody has, or maybe go call a friend and see if you can go for a walk or go out for a coffee or something. I think it's an art that a lot of folks have lost when we were thinking about, if we go back in time to COVID, when we just didn't have that connector time. And so I think it's okay that we reconnect, kind of get away from the little boxes that run in our hands, and kind of just chat. So so that's what's right with me. That was a long iteration of what was right with me. So can I ask somebody who's in the booth, Brett, what's right with you today?
Oh, let's see. What's right with me today? In fact, I'll be able to go home and get some biking in after work today. It's the nice weather we've been having. So,
Sweet.
yeah.
Yeah. The weather is going to be cooperative.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
And not so much sweating. Okay, I wanted to bring Brett into the conversation just because he's the man behind the glass and he's amazing. So yes, that was Brett. He's Johnson. He is our one of our program, or the program guy of the world. So what I'm going to be talking about today, being a Lone Ranger, I had an awesome, amazing opportunity to be part of a conference last week, and it was hosted by the Lung Mind Alliance. And some of you might know the American Lung Association. Probably that's going to come off the top of your head a lot easier. But the Lung Mind Alliance is an incredible group of humans, and they brought some really great people together. And the discussion was about nicotine and how nicotine/tobacco, and kind of what that impact is. And I was brought into the conversation about, where does nicotine/tobacco come in the substance use disorder world, because that's a huge thing. It's a real conversation about how many people stop using substances like alcohol or drugs or street drugs or prescribed medications that maybe they're getting a little bit more dependent on, and they stop those substances and then they pick up smoking because I'm just saying, we got kind of this addictive mind. And so, either habit of taking something to take down the stress, or you're switching your addiction because it is okay. I'm putting that in air quotes if you can see. And the idea is that smoking is, and vaping and chew and the packets, they all carry nicotine, folks. And that is a terribly, terribly addictive chemical that really does things in the mind that I don't think we talk about all the time. And I walked away from this seminar, and I will give kudos to a lot of different people that when nicotine and tobacco come into our world of substance use disorder, it is seen as okay, but we have to remember how harmful it is. It it might be the, I'm gonna call it the bridge to get somebody away from the more illicit drugs or the more theoretically deadly drugs, but we are switching over to one of the largest killers of people around the globe, which is tobacco nicotine. And so I know I'm probably rattling a cage here and there. Well, Caddy, at least I'm not doing street drugs. I'm not doing fentanyl. I'm not doing xylazine. I'm not drinking. And I'm like, I applaud you for not doing those chemicals, but I want everybody to kind of just open up their brain a little bit. And I've got some good materials I'm going to just sort of reference from the thing that I was at that talks about how nicotine affects us. And I will say, back in the day, I wasn't a smoker of time, but boy, I didn't have any problem picking up a cigarette when I was in the bar. And what I learned is that since you have alcohol is a depressant and nicotine is sort of an upper, you put those together and you can go all night. And guess what? That's a lot of time what I did. I was able to kind of feed both sides of the sources, and I was able to party on all night. Now, had a lot of good times, but there's a lot of trouble that happened in that. So when I kind of put all those pieces of the puzzle together, I was like, huh, okay. Chemicals, these chemicals that we take, they affect our brain chemistry, and they affect our physical chemistry and how we feel and how we walk through the day. And I just want to just give people information. I am not judging because I've done enough of my own stuff. I am not saying that you can or you can't. I don't do any of that. But I think the mission that I have as a woman who gets to have this incredible opportunity of being on the radio talking about recovery and talking about substance use disorders, I just want to give you information. And that is sometimes really what we just need, because we don't know what we don't know. Thank you, Celie Dudley from Recovery Alliance Duluth. You don't know what you don't know until you know it. And so some of the information that I picked up last week was like, wow, like light bulb moment, like, geez Louise, what is this that I didn't know about? So that's going to kind of be our discussion when we come into the next part of our conversation. So strap on, try to get comfortable, even if you get a little uncomfortable with what I'm talking about. Remember, I'm not coming from a judgment space. I'm coming from an information space. So when we come back from break, I'll give you some more tips and tricks and things just to think about. Thank you so much for listening to Redefining Recovery, a recovery revolution here on AM 950, the progressive radio station for Minnesota Recovery Connection. Thank you.
At the liquor store begging for your change. The hair on his face is dirty, dreadlocked in for the main. He asked a man for what he could spare with shame in his
Welcome back to Redefining Recovery, a recovery revolution, here brought to you by Minnesota Recovery Connection, where we value education and peer-to-peer support and advocacy. I am doing the show alone today, and I need to just slow things down a little bit because I have a tendency to talk fast. As being a trainer at Minnesota Recovery Connection, I'm always about getting information out to folks. So I'm just going to dial it back a little bit, take a deep breath, take some advice from Brett, and just kind of like let y'all just sink into stuff. As I said last week, I was at a conference and it was called the Lung Mind Association, and they had a convening, I should say, of people from the healthcare field, from the substance use field, and from the mental health world. And we were talking about how nicotine and tobacco are impacting life in general. And again, casting no shame, because I know this is sometimes really, really a space where people that particularly struggle with substance use disorder, if they can lean on something that isn't perceived as something that can actually kill them, which is what can happen with street drugs, can happen with the things that are mixed into the chemicals that people can take, and they don't know it. We've been talking about cannabis, pot, marijuana. There can be some things mixed into those kind of cannabinoids that can really affect somebody. Recently heard a story about somebody who went out and bought some pot off the street, marijuana off the street, and it was laced with fentanyl. And the individual made it through the situation, but there was a overdose that took place, and they came back. So we just don't know what's out on the streets, folks. So it's really important. So when we talk about tobacco, we talk about nicotine. I know it is definitely a lean on for our community, and vaping, and maybe using the packs and using chew. But I also want to bring to mind that this is the kind of stuff that also has consequences after use. And what I really took away is that when individuals start much younger, in their early teens, in their teens, getting nicotine into your system can be extraordinarily, it can project the future of your substance use going forward. And I don't know that I knew that as well as I do now. And what is super important is that I'd like to just give you some information so that not to freak you out, not to scare you, not to blame you, not to say, oh, if you only would have, or if you didn't, you might not be in this situation. This is truly all about information. At this age now, at this point, when I can learn something new, I feel really important to share it. To that point, currently the week that that you're hearing this, we're doing a training for peer recovery specialists. I've got 11 marvelous people in the class. And because of this conference that I went to, I shared this information, and just a real snippet part of it. And two of the individuals from the class brought it back to one of the recovery housing spaces that they are living at, and just kind of said, hey, did you know that when you are using nicotine, that this could have been kind of like it's a thing that you want to think about. It's a thing that you want to think about. There are consequences. There are things that it's not just a safe place to go, but it's a comfort place to go. And the individual that he told kind of went, well, yeah, I kind of know that, and then talked about some of the problems that the vaping particularly can do, on how it hits your brain differently than other chemicals that you're using. And it was like a light got turned on. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. So like I said, I've been doing a class this week. I've got my marvelous Sarah Kemp. You all know her. She's my work wife. But I want to do a quick shout out to the students in my class. So I'm going to quickly run through their names, just because it's always fun to hear your name on the radio. I've got a person named Ellie, Phil, Ryan, Polo, Katie, Will, Taylor, Deshaun, Lo, Ingrid, and Devin. These are people that are in my class currently that are marvelous students with an amazing amount of knowledge that we get to share when we do these classes, because that is really the essence of what this whole conversation is about. So I want to give credit where credit is due for the people that brought me into and have given me some knowledge. Reba Matthews Jacobson, she brought me into the conversation. Pat McCone, I believe I'm pronouncing that name. And then a lot of the information that you're going to be getting now is coming from Steve DeLisi. I've had the honor and privilege of being educated by him. He does the science of addiction and a lot of other things, but he was the main conversationalist in this conversation about how nicotine affects us. So one of my big takeaways, folks, is that youth needs to be extraordinarily educated on when they start vaping, particularly young, they start smoking young, they start chewing young, that this can set a precedent for the future of substance use disorder. And it goes up exponentially that if somebody starts very young, because the young brain is very malleable. It is extraordinarily receptive to all this information. And that's the beauty of being young. We have all of these synapses. I'm going to use a lot of terms that might not be appropriate and scientific, but sort of how my brain works to try to explain this. You know, in the young mind, we've got all this excitement and we've got all this information coming at us, and we kind of take it in and take it in and take it in. It's like, wow, this is really cool. And then you bring in nicotine, you bring in tobacco into that. It's like, wow, this is really cool. And it makes you feel good. It makes you cool. You hang out with the cool kids sometimes, or it's a way for you to just get a hit of nicotine, which will kind of give you a little bit of a high. And you feel great. But what it does is it sort of opens up one of those receptors that just moves forward with you as you go through life. And again, I'm talking scientifically from Caddy, not from a scientific. This is sort of the stuff that I took away that really impacted me. So I might get things slightly off, but please just forgive me because I just want to share. Again, I'm saying that. So think about the young mind. It has all these incredible little brain spaces going on. You throw in education, you throw in sports, you throw in young love, you throw in, getting romantically involved with folks, and then you throw in these chemicals. And nicotine sometimes is that gateway into maybe headed towards substances. And what it does is it just sort of lays a little foundation of what can happen when you get exposed to maybe the next chemical, which would be pot, marijuana, cannabis, whatever, however you want to phrase it. It's like, oh, that looks kind of cool. Cigarettes are kind of boring to me now, or my vape is kind of boring. I'm going to try this next thing. Because what you've done is you've kind of turned on, I'm going to call it an on switch. And what happens is that on switch has these characteristics of addiction. And then what happens is that you've got somebody who might just really be enjoying these chemicals. Now, what I know about the science of addiction is that dopamine is the space. Okay. We all love dopamine. Dopamine comes when the brain has been clicked on by eating sugar or having a smoke or a vape or having romantic activity with someone, or even going for a run, going to the gym, having a good robust conversation like ahead. You get this, what I call this happy juice going on in your brain. And so there's the uh, self-produced dopamine, and then there's the fake dopamine, I'm going to call it. And that is where when we talk about opiates and overuse of opiates, or overuse of fentanyl, overuse of xylazine, overuse of metotidine, and many cocaine and heroin, you're turning on the dopamine in an overzealous way. You're giving your brain too much, but it makes you feel good, so you want more. Welcome to the potential for addiction. And so if you think about it from a chemical perspective, we all have dopamine running through our bodies, but when we add it in an excessive or an overabundance, what we do is we sort of throw off the chemistry in your brain. And that's one of the things that nicotine can do as well. And particularly when you're talking about a young mind that's still in development, you're kind of flicking a switch, folks. And this probably happened to a lot of people that are listening. You started when you were young. It was like being part of like the cool club, or your parents said, "Hey, have a smoke," or your best uncle or your aunt, even your grandma, or somebody said, "Oh, it's not that bad to give it a try." Maybe, I don't know, somebody might have happened. And you did, and you're like, "Ooh, that's kind of cool." Well, you might have just changed a little bit of chemistry, and you might have possibly switched on a switch that made it a little bit more attractive to try other substances. And then there's also what I learned is there's a genetic component too. So if you had a parent and you, particularly, obviously, a mother person who smoked while she had your little humanness inside her, there could be a little bit of a DNA, there could be a little bit of a genetic component too that is going to predispose you. Just like when we talk about substance use, can you be predisposed? Can you be in your DNA? Can it be in your genes that you might have an alcohol problem, myself included? A mother who had alcohol problems and mental health issues, a biological father who had alcohol issues, both of which died of those issues at 50-ish in their life. I've been able to outlive both of those individuals. But I feel absolutely, I believe to my core that there was a genetic component. So what can we do to stave off this? Let's just be aware of what's going around the young folks, and also those of us who are maybe have a little bit more years on us. If you're smoking and it really is good, you're vaping, which is really the issue, folks. Vaping is something that is so acceptable in our substance use disorder community. Everybody, not everybody, that's totally a lie. A lot of people do it because they're like, "Oh, it's not as bad as smoking." Well, it's just not as stinky as smoking is kind of what I say, because the chemicals are still there. And it is very well documented that the chemicals in the vaping pens, the vaping holders, whatever they're called, we don't always know what's in those. And so there's been enough science and enough medical results saying that people are having lung problems, similarly to what they've had with smoking in the past. And so, because of this conference and meeting Reba, meeting Pat, and meeting Stephen, and also some Department of Health and Human Services people, Amy, I apologize, Amy, I don't have your last name in front of me. I was able to feel as though I can speak to a certain amount of comfort that let's see if we can educate people on the if you get off your chemicals, you get off alcohol, you get off substances, and you go to smoking, you go to vaping, you go to the packs, you go to the chew. Let's move to the next level. Can we get somebody off of those? What we do is we know that there's a success rate of staying in recovery much longer when you even quit those next levels. If you quit the nicotine and getting that tobacco stuff out of your system, there is definite proof that you will have a longer sustainable recovery from substance use disorder. And you will also be healthier, and you'll be around for your people around you, your children, your grandchildren, your cousins, your loved ones, your partners. You'll be around for your community longer. So I just want everybody to kind of think about that let's not just accept the fact that it's better to use smoking or vaping and I got off the bad stuff. Now let's get into the good stuff. Um, or get off to the stuff that's easier. Sorry, that kind of came out wrong. So, one of the things that epigenetics is something that Steve talked about, and this really does talk about where the brain goes with genetics. And they did a study, and yes, this was with some animals because they can't do it on humans. So please understand that some things have to happen from scientific animal research, and that is a individual that is smoking at a young age has a higher percentage by about 20 to 30% that they are going to move on to other chemicals. And this has to do with that thing that I was talking about, is that you kind of turn on this light switch inside the young brain. And then if you are somebody who smoked younger and you went into substance use, you kind of kept that switch open and you've given it an opportunity to work forward. Vaping pouches in the adolescent brain, e-cigarettes, they have a higher percentage of use. Some of the statistics that I thought were kind of interesting is that nicotine pouch use increased from 7% to 10% in 12th graders, from 4% to 5% in 10th graders, and from 0.8% to 1.4% in 8th graders, folks. These things are hitting these young kids at younger and younger ages. And if we think about the detrimental effect that it can have moving forward, if you're a parent, you're a caregiver, you're a caretaker, you're an observer of young folks that are using these methods of kind of being in the, I constantly say the cool kid club because that's what it was back in the day. Just say, hey, you know what? I just want you to know that I care so much about you, and tell me what's going on with, using these. Well, it's cool. It makes me feel good. It's like, yeah, it does. Maybe we can go for a walk and talk to your young person about, this is all chemical stuff. And it's probably, it's going to be boring to you because why would you want to talk about the boring stuff? But let's go for a walk. Let's go for a ride. Let's go for a bike ride. Let's go out for ice cream. Golly jeepers. Let's turn that dopamine switch on in a way that the body is actually producing it versus we're putting it into our body's false, and risking the future of young folks. I talk about cell phones a lot too. I talked about that earlier, and that is these devices are just consuming a lot of our lives. I think a lot of the people that struggle with substance use disorder, we're also using, rolling down the reels or going to TikTok and going into those areas. These are all, there's a lot of science behind this from the people that produce these addictive activities. And that was one of the conversations that took place with Pat. And she was just talking about there's marketing towards us everywhere, y'all. There's marketing. If you think about it, one of the young women in my class, they're marketing vapes and vapes and pouches and things, and all these like snappy little flavors, watermelon and strawberry and candy cane and all that kind of stuff. So it smells good. It feels good. It feels really, what can I say? It feels really non-intrusive, because if anybody has been around somebody who smokes cigarettes, that's pretty smelly. And that's why it became, if anybody was old enough, they would go out to the bars and the restaurants and they were at smoking areas. You'd come home and you'd take off your jacket or your sweater or something, hang it outside because it smelled, because you weren't a smoker. So now we have all these, enticing flavors and smells. And it's like, oh, it's not that bad, because if it doesn't smell bad, it's not bad. Well, it is. And I just want people to realize that you want to take care of your lungs because you can't do much without them. And also you're changing the chemistry in your brain. You're turning on valves that are just going to require more and more of these substances. It's like if anybody has ever had a gaming or a gambling issue, it's the same chemical in your brain that when you get that happy juice flowing from gambling, it's like, oh, I won, or I might win, or I'm going out and I'm having promiscuous relationships with people and having a lot of exciting sexual activity. Those are dopamine hits. Those are, gambling and behaviors that are unhealthy for us. It usually is because we need to get ourselves more in a happy space. And I'm not saying you can't do what you're going to do and you're going to be all the human you want to be, but how can we take care of one another? And if we see somebody that's got a problem, we see somebody who's at risk, we see a young person, or we see somebody who's really depressed and they're utilizing anything that I just mentioned, gaming or gambling or street drugs or alcohol, cocaine, heroin, opiates. We have a lot of people that are feeling less connected. And how do we get people connected again? And that's where Minnesota Recovery Connection, I'm going to always talk about the peer-to-peer work that we do. But you can be a peer too to somebody out there. Sitting down, talking to someone, have a conversation. It's like, hey, when did you start smoking? When did you start vaping? Oh, I did it here, did it there. There's nicotine in there, and they might not even understand nicotine. They just think it's kind of cool. It's kind of fun. Well, yeah, I've heard about that. It's like, it's really hard on your body. What do you mean it's hard on my body? Everybody says it's kind of cool and I'm not using street drugs. Well, yeah, but sometimes information needs to be shared with people because they just don't understand the consequences of stuff. I had a beautiful, beautiful friend named Carol who passed away about 3 years ago, and she was a very heavy smoker for years. This is all pre any of the vaping or probably chew is out there, and she always had a heavy smoking issue, and she was a drinker. She wasn't necessarily put into the category of abusing alcohol, but it was truly a partnership. When she would go out to the bar, A and B were together all the time. And ultimately, I believe it was a combination of some complications with some health issues, but she had stopped smoking, but had some lung issues that were taking place. And she died much earlier than she should have. And she saw that eventually she should stop smoking because there was this impact having on her. And so I just want people to know that when we in the substance use disorder world, the addiction world, we stop using one substance, sometimes we go to the next. And I'm not saying, again, I'm not casting judgment. I just want people to know that there are consequences, particularly to these heavy, heavy chemicals. And the marketing that's done towards us from all of these companies, even saying, because if we think about it, there were cigarettes back in the day that didn't have filters. Well, filters were put on to make them more attractive and say that it's less harmful for your health. Or the slim cigarettes back in the day. There used to be different cigarettes that didn't have as much tobacco. These were all marketing campaigns to still entice you into using their product, but sort of trying to toss out a little bit of a air quotes healthy use. And now we have a lot of other smoking methods available to us that are being marketed towards us as well. And there's a statistic out there that in the recovery community, that a lot of people who are in the treatment, in the community of recovery, there's a lot of smoking that takes place because they are, I don't want to say trading addictions. That's way, way too judgmental. They are just going to another method so that they can have a little reprieve. And the fact is that you are using another chemical that has a danger to your body and your long-term health. And the idea, if you stop using substances that are harmful for you, you're thinking about your long-term health. How do we just continue to move that along and make it something that we can live a life full for our people that are important to us, either kids or cats or neighbors or partners or parents or grandparents or aunts or uncles or cousins. We want to be around as long as we can. And to do that, being the best you can be about being healthy and taking away some of these things is going to be beneficial. So I hope I haven't bored you. There's a lot of stuff I dropped in there. I want people just to be more aware that I, as a woman in long-term recovery, have seen a lot of life and have seen a lot of things change through the recovery community. And when I can have a young woman in our office about a year ago pick up her vape device and puff it right in the middle of our office, and she all of a sudden saw me standing there, and she didn't even realize that she'd pulled it out of her pocket and pulled on it and like blew the smoke in our office. I realized there's something else going on here, folks, because people are doing it unconsciously. And you can't do that with a cigarette because you got to go outside and you got to go, 10, 12 feet away from the building. But this vape business is much more. And these pouches, which are invisible, particularly to kids, or younger folks because it can just disappear in their mouth and nobody's going to know the better. How can we intervene and get the addiction cycle not turned on, but at least let's just wait till brains are developed and we can make better frontal lobe decisions. So thank you for listening. We're going to come back from this next break and I'm going to close this conversation up. Thank you so much for listening to Redefining Recovery, Recovery Revolution, brought to you from Minnesota Recovery Connection and on this marvelous station of AM 950, the progressive radio station. Catch you on the other side. Thank you.
'Cause without it, there's no song. And this house needs love.
Gosh golly, Aaron Fitzgerald, I'm still going to give you credit for this music pick you have on our show. Thank you, my friend. I just love that music. Thank you for listening. Hey, it's Caddy Frink at Minnesota Recovery Connections, Redefining Recovery, Recovery Revolution here on AM 950. Yay! Well, I'm in my last segment. I've kind of dropped a lot of stuff on you. I hope you just sort of give me an idea. I was just talking quickly to Brett, and it's like 10, 12 years ago, we didn't have vaping going on. We didn't have the same kind of thing going on. And tobacco has been around for, I don't know, 1 million or 2 million years. We know that. And then I also definitely want to make sure that when I say tobacco, I am not in any way discrediting the Native American community and the traditions that that community has with tobacco. I have been privileged and honored and given such opportunity to learn about some of the traditions around the sacred tobacco and the traditions there. So this is outside of that. This is the marketed tobacco that comes from the tobacco companies that are doing things that are harmful to people's health, but then they say it's not. So just sort of saying. So I just really want to acknowledge that because that was one of the key things that was discussed when we were in this convening, that we have to make sure that we are recognizing there are spaces and places where traditions have been around on this planet much longer than what we have in our current day. So I don't know if anybody's like a statistic geek. I kind of am. And so what I want to say, and I've already said it, that quitting smoking increases the odds of your successful substance use disorder and recovery. National representatives study said on a study of about 3,000 people, discontinuing smoking was accounted for a 42% increase in the odds of substance use disorder recovery. 42% when you take out that nicotine and smoking, that stuff. Folks, that's a huge amount. Even accounting for variables, the increase was 30%. So maybe you take one part away, you reduce your smoking, you reduce your vaping. It will definitely increase your ability to sustain your recovery. And I think what I think about that is that if you go from using the heavier chemicals, you're off of your opiates, you're off of cocaine, you're off of heroin, you're off of all of the things that are so incredibly destructive and possibly deadly, that when you are using your bridge, some people might call it a crutch, to go to a nicotine, to go to smoking, to go to vaping, let's take that and move it one step further. And let's just give your odds to getting off of chemicals, give it that extra bump. No, that's even a bad word. That extra, we'll just leave it there. Because I think about, if you are an individual that uses smoking, you go outside and you go and hang around people who are doing the same activity. And if you're in recovery and you go outside and hit your vape or have a cigarette, There might be somebody there who could give a poop about your recovery and say, "Hey, I got a little something, something over here. Do you want to give it a whatever?" And you're like, "Oh man, I'm having a bad day. I don't want to necessarily do that." Yeah, you might just be in the cool kids club and it might just run you into some old activity. So once we take ourselves out of that kind of environment of using those chemicals with people who might not have our same objective, that's kind of what I think about. Doesn't mean you can't go outside and talk to those folks. You're just not using the same chemicals around them. So go out and talk to your friends. Go out and bring your soda or your iced tea out and talk to those folks. But if you're not partaking in that same activity, you're like, hey, probably feel a little bit better. Hey, I haven't done that for a while, or I've really cut down my use. It could definitely change how you feel physically. And I think one of the other things that I learned was that a lot of times people who struggle with either anxiety or depression or some social phobias, maybe they have a mental health issue, they will use a vape, smoking, packs, chew, and it supposedly reduces their anxiety. And what Steve was talking about, and that is when people use those vices to that thinks that it's helping them, when they actually take them away, the anxiety, the depression usually decreases. So there's a false sense of comfort in using these things because you think it's helping. And maybe it does, could possibly help because you're able to cope with a situation. But maybe that's when a mental health professional or a peer recovery specialist from Minnesota Recovery Connection, or some outside support, some nicotine patches or things like that that distribute the nicotine not in such a huge into your system. A nicotine patch distributes it on a much lower level, but it kind of helps you regulate your brain space. So, the idea here is that when we think about how we're going to move forward on this recovery journey, how can you see yourself through a lens of, I see myself wholly and completely? Can I take out some of these other chemicals that have been given kind of a pass, given sort of an okay, and maybe look at it and say, maybe I want to even be better in my recovery. I want to be stronger. I want to show my community around me that, hey, I don't have to smoke. I'm still going to talk to you. I'm still going to come out and sit outside with you, but I'm just not going to partake. It's okay. Be your own person. Recovery brings out a whole new part of who our individuality is. And so think about, many people I remember back in the day, the cool kids did things that ultimately now, if they could change the trajectory, they wouldn't have. One of the guys in our class said, I got involved with the kids that I thought were cool at the time, and it led me to the penitentiary because I didn't know any better, because they were the cool folks or they were the folks that were the influence of the time. Maybe what we can be in our recovery for anybody at any age, we can say, hey, I care so much about you. What do you think about this vape and smoking thing? Do you think maybe we could look at some alternative? Can we dial it back a little bit? I know you're going to be a little cranky. I know you're going to be a little spicy. But maybe you might feel better. A really good friend of mine, Boo Boo, he stopped smoking years ago, but it took him several months because he had a lot of tar in his lungs that he had to expel. And it was tough on him. It was really tough on him. And he got some support from medical professionals, but ultimately he doesn't smoke anymore and he feels a lot better. And that's really important to me because he's a pal from a long time ago. And the idea is we want to be around as long as we can for the folks that we love, the people that we care for. And when we take away the chemicals that can do our physical body harm, hey, it only gets better from there. And as a woman who is in recovery, I battle with my own food stuff. I battle with my phone swiping. I battle with my own vices that get that dopamine going on. And I know I have to take a look at them. So all I'm asking you is that maybe this is something that you can look at. We're never going to be perfect. We're never going to have to present ourselves as people that have licked it all. We've got this all under control because I think there's too many moving forces out there. But if you focus in on who you are and who you want to be for the people that you love and your communities that you care for. And I'm going to say again and again, for the young folks that are getting a lot of mixed messages from a lot of marketing campaigns from every space or place, between their friends, their phones, their communities. Let's just see if we can. I don't think we can turn back the hands of time, but can we make an impact? And for those of you who are using these devices, just know that I love all of you. I think you're all amazing. You've been able to kick a habit that could have killed you outright, and now I just want you to think about how can you live a really full and meaningful life and maybe sustain that beautiful recovery that you have, because you all mean so much to me. I'm going to try not to cry because I just got all kind of weepy in my soul there. So I just want to thank you for listening to Redefining Recovery, a recovery revolution, the dream of my life. My name is Caddy Frink, your host. I'm here with Minnesota Recovery Connection. And I want to say thank you to AM 950, the progressive radio station. Be well, be happy, be safe. Take care of yourself. Take care of the people that you love. Take care of your community. Take care of your cats, your dogs, your fish, your iguanas, all of those things. Just be well. And I thank you for listening. Have a great, great day. Bye-bye.